Okay, John, I do
Anyway.
believe we are live. Hello, everyone. This is Inspire Millions, stories to inspire your success. And today's topic is how to reset the blueprint from setbacks. A huge thing for all of us to move through, for being aware of, to be able to pivot in our mental state, to be able to leverage our lives to a higher position when we feel like the world is crushing our soul and we've got nowhere to turn. How do we reset that blueprint? How do we get a new vision? How do we move forward in that direction? And how do we raise ourselves above the energy of desperation and depression or anxiety to move forward in the direction that we know is possible in our own lives? Today, I've got John Reynolds. We had a great conversation a few weeks back. He's back again to share his wisdom and his knowledge and his experience. And this is going to be an awesome conversation. John.
Hi, Kane. Thanks for having me back. Really excited about today's topic. It certainly opens up a lot of different dimensions and conversations about each person's journey of self-discovery.
Absolutely it does. And I think one of the hardest things that we have when it comes to that situation is that some people think that they're alone, and that's probably one of the hardest things to break through, is feeling like you're alone and feeling like that you can't bring it up to anyone because you might seem weak, that no one will understand, that no one cares.
Yeah.
And it's a very challenging process when you are in that. Now, in your experience, can you fine tune a point? Can you choose a moment in your life where that experience was punching you in the face with a full right hook?
I can think quite a few, actually. I've been thinking about this a lot. I mean, in terms of, I think the rawer it is, I feel like the first few times it happens, I wasn't aware that it was happening. It just feels like it's real. It's happening in that particular moment. And then over time, repetition, you start to get the sense that maybe there's something else happening within this. I mean, the first time you get your heart broken, the first time you really lose something really important to you, or you have an injury or a job or something that didn't pan out. So look, not specifically. I think those big ones, that the divorce, major health or injuries and things like that, I can certainly remember very vividly those, your vivid description of being this crushing feeling, like, what am I going to do? Like, how am I supposed to bounce back from this or live my life when what I thought was going to happen is destroyed? And I don't know. The idea, you get married, you raise, you have children, you get a house, this blueprint is all there. And then the idea is like, well, that's gone now. You can't sort of go back and go, oh, I'll reset it and I'll have this new life. No, that's it. You're already a person who's on the other side of marriage. You're on the other side of potentially issues with being a single parent. You can't play your sport anymore. You can't do certain things that you thought that was my life, that this is who I was going to be. And now it's like that's done. So there's this reconciliation with the idea that I have to let go, or I choose to let go of the expectation. So your question for me, I sort of feel maybe when I got with my divorce, I kind of knew that my marriage was, or the first one anyway, was on the rocks. And somehow I still felt like I wasn't going to let it go, because then I would be one of those people who had failed. There was this notion that I was going to be a failure if I couldn't get myself out of this. Well, I'm not going to do what my parents did. I'm not going to be like this person. I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to be able to fix this. I'm going to be powerful enough to overcome my limitations. And when it all was said and done, I felt so naked. I felt so depleted and raw, and yet nothing was actually happening to me other than my own persecution. Right? No one was coming up to me going, "Ha ha, you're terrible. You're a failure." Nobody did the things that I thought they were going to do. Life didn't come at me any harder. It was just me standing there going, well, my plans had changed, and I wasn't able to marry it up again. So, like we said, talking about today, going back, resetting, and looking at, well, okay, well, what was the lesson? What was the opportunity? What did I take from that? So I think it's those big ones that somehow when you're growing up and here's this thing that it's going to make me, right? I'm going to have this wonderful job. I'm going to have this wonderful life. I'm going to have my partner and my children, and life's just going to be amazing. It's just going to be all smooth sailing all the way to the end, happy ever after, right? That's a false narrative.
Well, yes, yes, it is. It is because the fairy tale to life is very much on the aspect of you want to live in a fantasy. You want to project yourself forward. You want to live that dream that is so close to your soul. But the mystery to life is about the unknown. And the mystery of discovering your soul is the exciting part of that journey, because you aren't really, especially when you're younger, you really aren't aware of what your soul needs to experience in this lifetime. And the things that happen to you is part of your soul's journey. It's for you to physically work it out consciously. So you're connecting to your subconscious. So you're creating new pathways in your own mind, how to overcome the challenges that your soul needs to experience to be able to move forward in the direction of what it needs to actually achieve in its time on this plane, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you just told me about an experience through divorce in that first instance, but give me a moment, man. Give me a moment where you felt like God just stood on your head and tried to squish your brains out of your ears, right? Give me that moment. Give me that emotional moment where you thought that it's enough. I can't do it anymore. I'm done. I want to leave.
And yeah, it certainly flashes up the very moment where, and look, I think the conversation, if the higher the highs is relevant to the lowest of the lows, it's a duality. When you look at flatlining, that's death. So there's the beat above and below, right? So there's that kind of sense that even the heartbeat, it goes above and below the line because there's a register of the blood going in and the blood going out. So we can't just have half a breath in and a full breath out. So there's this sense of you can't be half pregnant. It's all or nothing. And the sense, if we're going to talk about the limits, now I've never had the experience where I've tried to commit suicide, right? But I've thought about it. And I think you potentially as a human being, until you reach that potential of, do I even want to be here anymore? Is this it? Am I done? I can't, it's too much, it's too painful, it's too hard. And I remember I was actually in Japan at the time doing a contract, and I'd left, there were some issues there, and I had an opportunity to go overseas. And that's when it kind of all fell apart. So I couldn't even do anything about it if I tried. And I remember, going up to the top of this building, and I'm standing on the top of the building, and all I had to do was just take that step, right? And just, so I was standing there and I was thinking about it. And the thought occurred to me that why would I choose to end my life over someone or something else? That was a defining moment where it had nothing to do with me, only my thoughts and fears and doubts and worries. So I kind of had this sense of relativity where it was like, it's got nothing to do with you, what another person does or how they act or their choice of where they put their heart or their money or their energies or any of those things. So I kind of had this moment of clarity where it was like, well, all right, well, it seems all too much. But seriously, are you going to finish this because of someone else and their decisions? And I had a sense of just like, all right, well, I'll give myself one more day. If I give myself one more day, and it's better or worse tomorrow. And then so every day this is where I learned to kind of stay present for the moment, because the past is a collection of memories which aren't necessarily true. They're only like this emotional relevance of something that may or may not be true. And the future is just imaginary. So the only thing I can really do at the moment is stay here with you right now, having this conversation. This is the only thing that's real for me now. So I kind of got to that point then, is, all right, give yourself one more day, one more breath, one more something, and then see how you feel with that. And that's kind of been my mantra moving forward. And I kind of got the sense that if we're going to use that idea of a creator being or source, I felt naked in the eyes of the creator. That I felt this idea that I felt embarrassed. That, like, is this what you're going to get upset about? Is this going to be the end of your experience on this planet, where you get tested and you want to throw all the toys out of the cot and that's it? Because there's two theories that I work on. Either nothing's relevant, there's no connection, there's no coincidences, there's no connection to it, it's all random, it doesn't make any sense at all, or it's all divinely connected, it's all interrelated, it's all this perfect experience. I like the latter, because I realize that gives me an opportunity to play in that opportunity. So, like I said, the first few, as a child, all these experiences that happen as a kid, I don't think you really have the idea about it's happening to me. It's not happening for me. And only over time did I start to connect these lessons and these opportunities and these opportunities to grow and learn. Because part of the heart's code is pain. It needs to suffer in order to grow and learn. Now, that may be controversial, that might kind of fly in the face, but I see that pain is very essential to grow. And if you don't get it, you may not be able to move forward in life, because you can't just bring your heart half the time. You literally have to have it out there to get bruised, to get scuffed, to get in some way maybe damaged in order to learn to heal.
So, John, you gave me this experience that you were on a rooftop and you questioned yourself about whether or not you actually wanted to exist any longer. And then you came to the realization, well, why am I doing this for someone else rather than looking at my own self? Just so we're really clear, just so the listeners are really clear, can you go back to that moment? Can you tell me what was actually going through you emotionally, mentally, in that moment? Can you remember that moment and just explain that feeling? I want to know about the thought processes, and I want to know about the emotion, because it's all good and well telling me that you're on a rooftop, but what was actually happening? What was happening to your body physically? What were you doing physically that was showing or expressing the pain that you're in?
The feeling was a lot of numbness. The feeling was more of a disconnect from everyone around us. I mean, you talk about that feeling of being alone. Now, I look at the two differentials. If you look at the word alone, potentially you break it down into all one. So I don't think it's an all oneness. It's more of a loneliness of being isolated and being particularly, because you can be, anyway, get ahead of myself. But the tension, the lack of hope, the lack of faith, the sense that it's all too much, the darkness is there, the voices are there to tell me all the things that were wrong with me, all the problems. It's like on repeat. There was just this mantra: it's too much, it's too hard, I can't do this, it's not fair. I mean, all of those voices of negativity, all those potential seeds of discord just ramped up, and I wasn't looking. I didn't want someone to come and solve my problem. I was done, right? And then I was up there, and I mean, it's interesting when you think about potentially how you're going to finish yourself or end this life. I think some people have a particular mode that they want to use. Some people are more attracted. For me, it was always heights, that I'd jump off something, that somehow that would free me from my persecution. And talking to other people along their experiences, I mean, some people do it very incredibly gruesome and messy, and I sort of feel like, but then that realization, like, okay, if I take that step, if I follow this through, that's it, it's done, it's all over. The part of me that was reconciled, there was a clear voice of okay, whatever that voice is. Now, I think we're a collective consciousness. There's not just one voice. I mean, I have multiple voices, and that they say that consciousness goes to the loudest voice. So sometimes I think people need to be aware of having an attachment to the volume control of which one they choose to turn up or turn down, and get the sense of duality. So luckily, or however it is, like I said, the higher the highs, the lower the lows. I mean, that was a very low point in my life, because part of the attachment to that was that when I was married, I had my son at the time, who was 18 months old. And, I swore that I would never do to him that which happened to me, which was to grow up without having a father around. So those things all clicked in. So it wasn't just like it wasn't happening to me, I was going to impact and affect other people as well. So again, it was just a compiling. It was just this layering. So the body was tired, the breathing was shallow, the fears are ramped up, the numbness, the isolation. It's a very, I'm saying for every single person, I mean, it's a unique feeling. But I know for me, it was a very lonely experience. The disconnect from a creator, from friends, from family, from any experience that was going to give me hope or a sense of reprieve. It was self-persecution, self-denial, that my life wasn't worth anything. So I don't know if that answers that. It's interesting to go to what level. I can't show you. I can't. It's just
but you can certainly express. I mean, that gives me a better idea of exactly where you're at, where you were at. And the shallow breathing. Did you punch anything? Did you break anything? Did you destroy anything? Did you release any particular anger, or was it more inwardness? Because people express it differently, and people need to be aware that people will react differently when they're up against the wall and they've got an imaginary gun to their head, right? And everyone will express themselves in a completely different way.
Well, I think there's that emotional process that afterwards I got very angry, because I made the decision to stay and keep this path. And now I needed to find some outlet. So that's when the anger started. That's when the drinking started, and all these other outlets of trying to numb this process, because I'm reconciling with unable to deal with the process. So I think there's that initial sense of emptiness, and then trying to fulfill or feel full. My experience of trying to put things in, and we can see that happening in life with food or with shopping or with the distractions from outside of self. So looking at the topic of today of dealing from setbacks is recognizing where am I deficient? Where was I not feeling fulfilled? And part of my experience was that I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel lovable, from the sense that I was rejected again So it was a reminder of my early childhood of not having a parent around. And now this particular woman had rejected me. So again, these familiar experiences, this ongoing journey of self-discovery was perpetuating another part of me going, all right, well, now you've got another opportunity. This is real. This is raw. You're not able necessarily to deal with what happened in the past. Well, let's give you another lesson. Let's have another look at this, and we'll rip open the bandage and look at this wound again, because it was relevant. And I look back now and I see how perfect it was. And again, I haven't probably thought about some of these thoughts for a long time. So to be articulate about the feelings or the ideals of that, and you could spend a whole afternoon just unpacking. And are we ever done with that? Do we ever finish dealing with the pain or the trauma? And this is sometimes where it's like, look, you can indulge. I feel like I can indulge in it for a little while. I'll open that box, I'll pull it out, have a look at them all. Okay, whatever the analogy is, I don't spend too much time indulging in things that I understand what it was. I don't need to have it up on the shelf. I don't need to have it on repeat to remind myself of where I've come from. I'm at a new place in my life. So that's part of the links in the chain that offer me my story of understanding.
Yes, your story of understanding. And I completely agree. You never, ever forget about the experiences that you've had. You never forget about the hardships that you went through. It's part of who you are. It's the makeup of who you are. It's your soul. So for you to forget about experiences, for you to ignore that things had actually happened to you, is like ignoring part of your soul, right? And if you ignore part of your soul, well, what's really happening? You're not really connecting to yourself. You're not a whole soul. You're not a whole person, because you're ignoring things that have happened to you for a reason, for you to up level, to work through, to move through, to become wiser, to become stronger, to be able to guide others that go through similar experiences so you can be there for them. I mean, if you go back through millions of years, centuries and centuries and centuries, right, of civilizations, you always had your elders. In whatever tribe, there was always elders. And the elders were there because they were elders and had lived through life a lot longer and had more understanding about what was going on and the choices to make, or the choices to think about in your decision process, right? And to not, like back in the day, if they had elders that oh no, I can't tell you about that experience, I'm still wounded by it. That wasn't an elder. People would be like, but you're the wise one. Why can't you tell me about experience that you had to work through so I can have a better understanding of how I can process it? Right?
Well, that's that relativity, isn't it? I mean, that's why we have relatives to help us to be relative, right, of the familiar, of the family experience. I mean, there's even the language helps us to remind. And when you talk about the soul, now, whatever that is, right, for me, I tend to look at it as a vibration. Now, if you look at what that makes that up, there potentially there's a code in that. And we receive this code when we're born. And to come to terms with learning how to walk again, or, if you believe in whatever, where we came from originally, but you've got to learn to walk and talk and think and function and fit in. And there's all the socioeconomics, there's all the programming, and somehow the soul code can sit there maybe dormantly because you haven't even had a chance to even look at it yet, because there's all these other things happening to you, and fitting into a family and fitting into an environment and going to school. And so layers and layers and layers and layers and layers. Yet this code, this blueprint is sitting there. And reconciling all of these experiences. Then at some point, you might have this moment where all of a sudden you see through it all and you see this idea about who you want to be. And so you start to practice that. And as you start practicing these vibrations of self-discovery, you start to bump into all these things that are in, you go, well, I don't need that, right? I don't need this particular experience. And so you start unlearning. You start reshaping your experience till you get back to a foundation that now it's up to me to build my own life. And the longer it takes to get there, if it doesn't, some people got this midlife crisis and get to 40 and suddenly realize their whole life is nothing what they wanted it to be. They followed somebody else's experience for themselves. And it's not too late. It's never too late to live the life you were born to live. But coming back to the soul code of the life that we're here to live, and it's tough, and it can be brutal. And like you said, you can feel like you're getting your head squeezed and all of these things coming along. I feel like still you get the whisper, and after a while you start getting bigger shoves, and then you get the spiritual fortitudes. You start getting these buses that come along and start really trying to get you to where life is going to give you what you want. Now, if there's a resistance to that, well, okay, well, now we're having this competitiveness of self-idealization. We've got the ego there. We've got pride. This is who I'm supposed to be. And we've got this gentle soul code going, well, here's the truth. This is real. What's the illusion? And like I said, going back to that point in time, whereas if I've got my life all planned out, step by step, and after a while, this thing's starting to deviate from the clear path of idealization.
Which is the part of the topic that we're talking about today, which is the blueprint, right? Which is everyone gets this blueprint into their head of this is what my life is going to be like. And then it doesn't go that way.
So we need philosophy. We need this ideals of words and formulas to go, well, hey, like a GPS. If I want to get where I'm going, I need a destination. I also need an origin. So the truth is about where you think you're really going to go. And sometimes there's going to be flooded roads or there's going to be things happening. So I'm going to have to go the longer way around. And that's going to be part of life, that we're not going to get this straight line between A and B. And yet a lot of people have not decided what their origin is. Their origin is still not a true ideal of their blueprint, because they've got this distorted or this misaligned sense of who they are. Honestly. And again, that's not a judgment. That's not a sense of, it's just some people potentially are very damaged, or they've got the split sense of self. And we look at all the mental health that goes on in the world today. It's a tough world to live in these day and age. So like you said, if you go back to the elders, maybe it was a clearer sense of self-purpose, of coming into this world, learning about the stuff as a child. But now there's so many influences. There's so many things that come along and take our attentions away and distract us from, we don't necessarily know how to communicate very well. We don't know how to have conflict resolution. We don't necessarily know who we are before we're looking for someone else to come in and complete me. Or you fulfill me. You're my better half. I don't need a better half. I'm fulfilled in myself, and someone can come along. There's no room in my heart. I don't put someone in there. There's no room for anyone else in my heart. I can't stand under someone else. There's no understanding you or someone. I can only comprehend or interpret. Does it feel familiar? Does it feel like I'm connected to that? And that's programming. That's words. That's a language. And if we have a poor programming system, and so when we talk about how to reset the blueprint, a lot of it comes around the language we use to construct the narrative.
Okay. So let's tap into this a little bit. We heard about your experience about wanting to end it. There's a whole process that you went through to move yourself forward away from that and going, no, that it's not right that I would take my life because of someone else, because
and for context, that was 20 years ago. So just for if people are curious, how long ago, that was around 30.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
For me.
So, how do you reset it, John? I know how I reset all my circumstances in life. The parts that screwed with my blueprint, which just happens. And sometimes you're so caught up in life, you don't realize that you've gone off the direction of what it is that you truly desire. And then when you get to a different destination and you become aware of it, you go, how the hell did I get here? This wasn't part of the plan. This isn't what I had set in my mind. This is depressing me. How did you change that blueprint for yourself? What steps psychologically and physically, because it's a combination of two, and the three, which is emotionally. So how did psychologically, emotionally, and physically did you put a new set of actions in place to change the direction of your blueprint and be gracefully appreciating the experience? To be able to sit in a form and state of happiness. How did you do that?
Well, I don't think it was so much about what I was doing, other along the lines of the being that I've always been. Like I said, going back to the ideals of who I truly am, and as opposed to all the criticisms and scrutiny and plans. And one of the words that pops up for me is acceptance. The more I learn to accept that my life is not a puzzle to solve, it's a mystery to live. And the more that I can let go, I mean, you talk to a lot of older people and they're saying, the older I get, the less I know. All these stresses and worries that somehow as a younger version of myself, that I've got these expectations and these drives, and the things now that I look back, I go, I don't even know why I got so upset or so obsessed around these qualities of to possess things. Because it used to be that so much of my life was important what was outside of me. And I guess the time it turned for me was when I started to see that the inner world was far more powerful than the outer world.
Can you repeat that?
That the inner world is far more powerful for me than the outer world. So much of life, people are, it's my reflection. The world reflects to me all of my beliefs and formulas and desires and codes. Everything comes back to me as my own reflection. So if I see something I don't like, that experience has little to do with any of it other than my experience of it, because somebody else can look at it, nothing to do with them at all. They don't even have any issue with it. So I can only be offended. And then you look at the word of offend, off end. Where do I go off the end of my experience in that particular process? So I've been fortunate that I've been raised by a mum that was very caring and loving and gave me some good foundations. That helps. And then able to follow some of those ideals. Now, it's still the process of what you think and then what you feel. Because my heart and my mind are not necessarily compatible. They're not necessarily software compatible. It's like having an iPhone and an Android. You're not going to be able to load those same programs in. So it's interesting to be external to both of those experiences, that I can step in and out of my experiences and not feel like it's me in there. I'm still an observer. If I can observe what's happening to me, I'm not going to get caught up thinking that it is me. Now, of course, the idea of being a spiritual experience or having a soul that resides within a body of flesh, well, who are we then? Which one's more important, my body or my soul? Or are they both separate again? And I'm neither one of those. I'm something else completely different. And that's a whole other rabbit hole conversation, right? So at some point, I need to make a decision. What's going to work for me? Because it's very confusing. And this is why I felt like this topic of conversation was pertinent to discuss, is because until somebody makes the decision for themselves, and the idea of the anagram of who is the idea of when someone says to you, look, how are you? It's an anagram of who are you? And every day we're asking people, how are you? How are you? Or how are you today? No, who? Who are you going to be today? Who are you going to be right now? Because if I know, hey, Kane, you know, how are you today? Oh, mate, you know, oh, okay. Well, I know now how you are. So we kind of need this clarity. But if we just breathed and we just observed, we would actually see a lot more in life than needing to explain it away. Because you can tell, you can see when somebody's having a hard time. You can see when you look into their eyes and you see, I like that. There's some authenticity. There's some genuineness. Or I'm not sure, right? So we really have to figure out who's running the show. If I'm going to be influenced by everything around me, then I'm having a great day and I walk out the door and someone cuts me off and that's it, my day's gone. I am not running the show. I'm waiting for someone to come along and divert me.
And this is a really interesting point, John. This is because that's a reactive state, right? So you're living your life by reacting to other people rather than responding to your situations, which gives you a foundation. Again, this all comes back to foundation, right? The foundation of who you are and what you stand for and the values that you live by every single day, not just when you feel like it, not just on the weekend, not just on a Monday. On a Monday, I'm going to be the person who I believe to be, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm just going to react to everyone else around me and be guided by everyone else's lives and be that people pleaser. And then on Saturday, I'll think about who I am again. So it doesn't work like that. You can't be like that, because that's how you get off your blueprint. That's how the course changes. That's how you get away from what it is that you truly desire in your own heart, because you're listening to everyone else. You're taking in their input. You're reacting to their decisions for you, their decisions for you. This is a really important key aspect, right? So many of it, and all of us have experienced it. We react to a decision from someone else who they believe are giving us guidance for what they think is the best thing for our life, when they have no input into what the decision that we need to make for our lives. Because the only person that can make a decision that is relative to our own life is ourselves. But it takes balls to be able to do that. Takes
for the females
courage.
Listening, it's metaphorical, right? I mean, you just improvise.
Yeah, that's right. You know, it takes girls with massive ovaries, right? that can swing them around and knock you out, right? To go, no, this is my decision. My life is my choice. And that is one of the most fundamental learning aspects that I've had to really lift in my own journey, that all the decisions that I get to choose are mine. All my responses are mine. Nobody else's. Just because they're angry at me for whatever particular reason doesn't mean I have to get angry back at them.
But wouldn't you agree that at some point you're going to need to face your own dark night of soul?
Hell yes.
You're gonna this feeling that to be sovereign, to stand up for yourself and risk being criticized or scrutinized, that somebody that you love or someone that you really care about is going to be reluctant to agree with you. And we're not raised that way. This challenge of unlearning is going right back to this blueprint. And then all the things that are built on it and all these annexes and things, potentially you look at it and go, this is a Frankenstein that's now built on top of my blueprint. Now it's okay. It may not be fully functional and there's some things that don't work and the plumbing's not good on the second floor and we don't get good reception up there, but it's okay. To destroy it all, when people say, well, what are you doing? Why would you change your name? Why would you want to do this? Why would you want to change careers? I thought this is what you wanted, to be an actor, like the story we had last time about with your dad, right? And having all that courage to stand up for yourself. But look at where somebody needs to get to before they're able to just accept that their decisions are the most important decisions. Because so many people, oh, well, I still want to make sure that they're okay. And this people-pleasing experience. Now, I know for me that I've been raised as a bit of a people pleaser. And so I felt like as long as everyone else was happy around me, I was okay with that. And it was a lot of hard work. And I went into the security industry, and it was interesting to look after sometimes, 1,000 people in a club with all the other guards, and have to kind of maintain that I was working my ass off to make sure that everybody was having a good time. And if somebody wasn't, I'm removing all the elements. So even part of my life was shaped that I wanted to make sure that everything was running smoothly for 8 hours, 10 hours, 5 nights a week, 6 nights a week, that I invested so much of my time fixing other people's problems. Now, I really enjoyed that. And for 25 years of my life, that was this kind of job description of psychologically, mentally, emotionally, physically, through the violence, through the coercion, through all the different forms. And the more I got on to the idea that I actually influence people with my own intentions. When I first started out, it was violent behaviors to solve violent problems. After a while, I got gentler and gentler. My words changed, my language changed, my whole demeanor changed. So this evolution that happened around me was just a reflection of what was going on inside of me. But I needed that relativity to shape my ideals. So we see a lot of the time, we need this life trauma. We need these things to happen to us to get a clear reflection of how it relates for me. The more painful and suffering it is, probably the more important it is.
Oh, I love that, man. Say it again, because that's on point, right? The more painful it is, the more that you get to know that it's more important for you to go through it, because there's probably a far bigger picture that you need to be associated to in the bigger scheme of things. And when you look at it like that, when you look at your life experiences, oh, my blueprint isn't working out. This isn't my everything's falling apart. I'm broken, because no one's ever broken, right? But when you've lost everything, the experience is there for you to go through, because there's a grander scheme for you to achieve. And if you don't go through it, this is a really interesting thing, right? This is a really interesting thing, John. The lessons are always there to be learned, right? No matter when that experience happened, if you don't learn the lesson and understand how that actually uplevels you as a person, as an entity, it just lingers there, right? Waiting for you to figure it out. It never goes. It never leaves. It's always sitting there, and the universe will keep slapping you, right? Something will happen, it will slap you. Hey, it's still here. Hello, slap. Right? And no matter how old you are, no matter how far you go on your journey, there is always the opportunity to look at the lesson that was actually always there for you to learn. And not only that, the moment that you accept that, it will take you to another level, almost like it's like a lift, right? All of a sudden, if you just, after 15 years of you not dealing with this particular shit that you've been tormenting yourself with, and you go, that's it, I'm going to grab it, I'm going to look at it, I'm going to learn the lesson from it, It's like hitting the button in the elevator and going, next level, please.
Yeah.
It happens pretty quickly when you grab it and accept it. And you go, oh, there it is.
It's interesting. You've worked with people, and I work with a lot of people, and some people I work with have had the most traumatic of lives. And I feel like it's important to address this, because I could feel like if some people were listening, and it's like, well, you didn't have what happened to me, you know, abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, horrible things that happen in the early foundations or formulations of life and its ideals. And that can be this part of ourselves that we're unwilling, unable to deal with. And to come back to these terms of being loved, and I ask people, do you feel like you're a loving person? Yeah, I feel like I'm a loving person. Do you feel like you can be loved? Yes. Do you feel lovable? And there's this moment of checking in that they might not be lovable, that something that's happened to them is somehow so distorting or misleading for themselves that how can anybody know this about me and I'll still going to be somebody? And so it's really hard. I feel that the first step is to forgive yourself. Now, self-forgiveness, as easy as that sounds of the wording, is such an interesting journey. Because before we can do anything outside of ourselves, if we walk around with the shield of protection, or they talk about the greater the front, the greater the fear, anybody that's promoting themselves to be a certain way is a reflection of what's going on the inner parts. And so you can see the duality within people, that if I'm all upbeat and laughing and joking, well, what happens when I'm not? What happens in the sensitivities and the vulnerability? And so learning to be vulnerable. And so many people have these parts of themselves that are not able to show up very clearly. And so they're going to attract somebody that's going to agitate or irritate or potentially stir that stuff up. And it's interesting to go along, man, why do I keep meeting someone like that? Why do I keep having this opportunity? Because life is still reflecting back to you the parts of yourself that maybe you're not able to look at yet or see clearly. And so this experience of going on, and I always like to break words down. And so with the lesson, we have less on, right? It's about taking things away. That's why we have lessons, to remove some ideal, some practice, some indoctrination, or some conditioning that's not true. Because I don't know, from that age, did I teach myself to walk? Did I teach myself? I wasn't even my name. I got given a name. I got given all these rules. I needed to be socially acceptable at a certain age, because if you take your child out at 4 and they're a misfit, you get judged as a parent that your child's not fitting in. So we're all very much kind of pushed into that experience. After a while, people start to pop out all over the place. Now, just because you're a very good scholastic student and you can regurgitate information willingly, that doesn't mean to say that you're an intelligent person. That just means you're very good at remembering things, and that might make you a good employee in certain environments. Yet somebody who's on that path of self-discovery, it might be they go and do things that you go, oh man, that's weird. Well, I don't know why that person's doing that. And have you heard what's happened to such and such? They've got, they've lost it. That's acceptance, that you just let people be who they need to be, and checking in and honesty and self-resilience and those processes. That if I'm meant to go through these marriage breakups, if I'm meant to go through the injuries, if I'm meant to go through the setbacks, right? It sets me back so that I can rediscover myself again. Even in the wording, the setback, right? The reset, right? That we go back to a place where I can see it again, and I see it again. And they say a lesson is repeated until it's learned. And then we can move on. In the film industry, we do takes, right? And so a mistake is one that we didn't get. go back and do it again, have another take until we get that scene, and then we can move on. So it's our own production. We're the director, we're the casting director, we're the cinematographer, we're the lead actor. Now, is your film going to be a romantic comedy or is it a horror thriller? We're choosing the genres. And so the spelling, what you don't like, that's not important. It's what you like. I am going to do this. I will do this. I like this. I want more of this. Instead of, well, I don't like that, and that person sucks, and this is terrible, and we're spelling negativity. Guess what we reflect back to ourselves? All the things that are relative. So I find myself now, for myself and practicing with clients, to learn to have a much better truth, or a more effective and efficient truth. And we do spell. It is very magical.
Mm.
I mean, if you listen to all of the Bibles, whether you believe in that, first there was the Word, and the Word was God, and God spoke this word, and everything came into existence. So it talks about somehow that sound and vibration is very important with what we do. So what are we spelling into our experience? Now that might seem awfully religious or metaphysical, and yet what if it's true? What if it works? That's the lesson. Before we dispel and judge, and maybe that's part of a negative connotation, that in my mind, I'm not very willing to accept new ideas. That's a closed program. I need to get rid of that software, update a new program, and become more open, potentially, to receiving things that are valuable to me, or more able to be utilized.
And I think what you mentioned about the lovable aspect, it's so true, because that's self-worth. And within that self-worth is a reflection of what is going on in your own life, and the choices that you make, and the people that you hang around, and the people that you just think that are okay. And, just going by an example of my own life. So I started a new relationship, 18 months ago. And there was one thing that I said to myself before the relationship, before I met this person. And that was, I'd done a lot of inner work, after my divorce, and really went through a self-discovery session and really released a lot within my own self, any hang-ups, any other lessons I hadn't learnt or understood, and also forgiven. And one big key element to that moving forward was, I'm going to be 100% honest on all levels of my life. And that goes for the people that come into my life. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that I'm now at an age where I don't want to waste my time anymore. I want to be upfront. I feel like I can't afford to let another year go by without being honest. And I don't want to drag anyone along that doesn't think they're resonating with me. I don't want to go into a relationship where there's maybe high sexuality, but because they don't understand the story or know the full story, and when they do find out the full story, there's potential there that it scares them away, or they decide that's not the kind of person I want to be around. So when I did start this new relationship, I threw everything on the table. I've been through this, and I've had this and this, and she was the same. And by only one person, it only takes one pebble to create a ripple, right? It takes one person to give the other person the courage and the confidence to share just as much. And when you allow that to happen, you allow the decisions that you make to be more real, that it's open and honest, that you can make a decision. Well, I've just given this girl everything about my life and she's still here. How good is that? Right? That's got to be worth something. And vice versa if a girl does that to a guy, because the moment we start hiding things, and we all know the truth eventually comes out anyway.
Well, it's a good time to talk about truth. Look at how much truth's truly coming out. And so full disclosure, that if you don't like yourself, it doesn't matter whether someone else may or may not like you. And that just, here's my experiences and exactly what you're saying of that reflection, that the more I'm able to show more of me, I give them potentially more permission to show more of them too. And it just starts to go that path. And what you were talking about was boundaries. When we have clear set boundaries, now there's a certain saying that says the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. That the moment that you feel like somebody's intruding on that boundary, that's the moment to share. If we let that go, you can't come back later on and go, oh, by the way, hey, I know you did this. So this is the point of learning worthiness, learning to respect yourself, love yourself, honor yourself. That if someone's not willing to accept you for all of your experiences, they're probably not the sort of person you want to have in your life, because this is the tip of the iceberg. And over time and energy, you're going to realize, like you said, it was a waste of investment, that I was going to align myself with somebody that ultimately was going to leave me bankrupt or spiritually bereft of myself. So this sense, isn't it? And the more shares we have, now we look at the idea of the money, it's in the share market. If we invest in people's shares, the stock goes up. So who invests in your shares? Who invests in your market of value? That's what we do with our the worthiness of that process. So it's very clear when I start working with anyone in my life or bringing them in, and I've started a new relationship too, that once I was clear on what I wanted and how I was willing to receive it, much easier to make decisions when you've got lines that are there, that as soon as somebody, it's like a radar system, it's like an early warning detection, starts to go off, and you're like, all right, now is this about them or is this about me? Now this is about me. So what do I need to share? Where's the sharing in this? And as soon as we start opening up a good sharing, life becomes infinitely more simpler. It doesn't mean to say it's easier, but it doesn't, the lessons get completed quicker. Because we move on. Hey, we've done this. You know what? I don't want to talk about this anymore. I think maybe we just end it, leave it there, right? It's all, again, in the process of what it is that we want. If we keep spelling what we want and how we'd like to receive it, when it shows up, we're going to be able to go. But if I keep saying, well, I don't want that, and I don't want this, and I don't like that, well, what are we working with then? If we know what we don't like, how am I supposed to know how to support you when I don't actually know what you do like? And like you said, the reaction versus the response, the ability to respond, that's experience. Like you said, the older you get, becomes a lot, the wisdom that backs up the philosophy. I like philosophy because it helps me keep me tracking with words. And then the wisdom goes, yep, that's still relevant. I might need to change some philosophies. I might need to edit them, the software, change the scripts. I'm not that person anymore. I'm not the 20-year-old Errol Flynn swashbuckling, jumping. You know, I'm this guy now. I've changed my position. And so I think people need to keep updating and editing their software programs, because a lot of this will relate to the heart. Now, the heart's involved all the time, unless it's closed, unless it's bricked up and oh, well, I don't want to get hurt anymore. It's been hurt so much. Well, guess who's hurting it? Guess who's creating all the experiences that are going to damage it? Because I'm going to do to myself what someone else is going to show me anyway, because I've set myself up. That's the setup to get upset. So I think the way I see it is that as soon as people realize they're creating their own environment, they're only seeing what they're setting themselves up to see. Now, again, easier said than done, because this is a practice. It's a daily practice. Every morning when you wake up, what's the practice? Do you bounce out of bed and, I'm not saying bounce, but do you get up and do some meditation? Do you do some stretching? Do you switch yourself on? Do you activate? Do you make your bed? Do you have these good habits that set you in good stead for the day? Or is it literally downstairs, flick on the kettle, have your cigarette and your coffee and, oh, mate, there's no guarantee you're going to wake up tomorrow anyway. So don't go to bed with worries, because you may not have them in the morning. Clear them before you go to sleep, and you'll sleep well. And then you wake up in the morning like, oh, well, let's start the day. But I see a lot of it's the unlearning. A lot of people are carrying a lot, we talked about it last time, with the baggage. There's a lot of stored, and we need less on. So do the lessons, and you will have a lot less to deal with.
This is on point, John. This has been a beautiful conversation, and I really think there's areas in here that should be able to give people a really clear understanding that to reset the blueprint, it's part of the journey, but it's a decision to take on that responsibility in yourself, that you choose to change the direction of the blueprint, that you choose to learn from the lessons, that you choose to evolve. And that evolving is constant, and it's never ending. And we do have to constantly, you're never an end game. No one is ever perfect. That is why there are elders. That is why there are more intelligent people out there. When I say intelligent, more wise to what can be achieved. Not necessarily right for you, but what can be achieved, what they've experienced can give you a better idea of what to choose in your existence, of what it is, because you don't want to copy anyone else. It's not about copying. It's about designing your own. But it's the inspiration from other people of going, okay, so what did they actually do? That resonates with me. That doesn't resonate so much with me. If you get really clear in what it is that you are as a person, who you are as a person, really listening to your inner, really listening to your stomach, your gut intuition is paramount to really connect to. And that only becomes really consistently clear when you're able to be consistently present.
Yes, those distractions. Because people, like I said, to learn to listen and be still. That word ask, always seek knowledge. It's an interesting process. Don't be afraid. Well, not don't be afraid. Feel free. I looked at the word fears. Now, within the word fears is the word safer. It's an anagram. So it's interesting that these phonetic vibrations, that if we look close enough into the fears, you can be safer or you can have fears. It's up to you how you arrange your situation, you arrange your thoughts. It's an arrangement of the day. And so if we keep looking, and this is the exciting part that I start to look in my life, is that I'm still getting excited about learning more and more about who I am and what my real blueprint is. And it keeps showing up that this idea of the design, that there's the sign, all the signs show up. And if we look for the signs, there's the direction we're going in. There's the sense of where I'm going to be led, because I do feel like I'm being led. So many things happen in my life now because I'm open to receiving, instead of feeling like I'm resisting and I'm pushing and I'm fighting and I'm driving and I'm working. And if I let go, what's going to happen? And I got to that point, as we talked about, going right back to the beginning, the moment I'm willing to let go of it all, it's a lot clearer. The truth is self-evident. The blueprint's already the blueprint. I don't have to change that. I just need, or I can choose to change and arrange so that it might be sequencing. I might need to let go of some of these hopes and dreams right now. Not that they're done, just move them away so it's simpler. because these distraction, oh, I have to have this now, but what about this and what about this? Maybe you need to ask for some help, ask for some guidance, ask creator, ask your friends, ask your family. I know in times I've had to ask for money. Yeah, wow, isn't that a kick in the pants when you've got to go to your people that you care about and go, listen, it's not like you're asking for a cup of sugar, right? This worthiness, and you see people really cringe when money comes up because, oh, I don't have enough, so I can't. Yeah, look, everybody's going to be the ripples in the pond. The clarity changes, and yet you know the truth. And it's not a question that you're asking to borrow their kidneys or their liver, or I thought, hey, if you can, you can. If you can't, look, even just the permission. That's another word we could spend a whole topic on. What are we permissible for? Because we go back to this childlike experience where the allowance or what you were permissible to do. Oh, can I? No, you can't have that. No, you can't have this. Oh, you're a terrible child. You're horrible. You didn't. So sometimes a starting point to how to reset from setbacks is to look at where the pressures were growing up, of where the resistance is. That normally gives you an indication. Where fear is where you need to go. That's the key for me. Fear is not necessarily of false evidence appearing real, but like feel everything, all right? And revive. So we can have this new, safer experience, not in the fears, but in the shifting of the paradigms. But that's something that gives you a sense of power. The empowerment. Are you a creator being? Are you in charge of your life? Or are you a servant? Are you a slave to a system that's got you pegged down, pinned down? And nobody can answer that question but the person asking.
Beautiful, John. John, I want to thank you for being here again today. It's really awesome to share your wisdom, your knowledge, your experiences. Everyone that's watching, this is Inspire Millions. I really just want to leave on what I find is one of the most fundamental aspects of this conversation, and that is fears. And if we walk through our fears, we will be safer. That in itself is part of the journey that we always need to walk through our fears to come to a place of feeling safer so we can move our lives in the direction of the blueprint that we choose to create. John, you're an amazing man, amazing soul.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate the connection as always. And obviously sending much love and blessings out to everyone going through their own experience, that it's a breathing experience. Breathe in, breathe out, repeat.
Exactly. Take care, my friend.
All right, lots of love. Thanks, Kane.
See you all again soon.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.